in today's Community Focus. With President Trump hoping to dismantle the Department of Education in Washington, we're joined now by the Executive Director of the National Education Association Rhode Island, Mary Barden. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me this afternoon.
So I'm going to borrow a question that Ted Nesi asked on Newsmakers over the weekend. They had Congressman Gabe Amo on about the Department of Education down in D.C. If states are still getting funding from D.C., is it so bad to really dismantle the Department of Education and try and be more efficient?
I actually think it would be detrimental to all the students here in Rhode Island. I think that every level of government serves a purpose in education, and definitely the federal government serves a purpose in education to make sure that all of our students are receiving a quality public education, as well as the state and municipalities. And I know as a 20-year plus Rhode Island educator myself, that cuts to the Department of Education or dismantling of the Department of Education would have an impact on all Rhode Island students. There are lots of programs that our students, both in rural, suburban, and urban areas, have funding that come to them from the Department of Education, programs like academic and intervention supports, before and after school programs, Pell Grants, which I know everyone talks about. I was a Pell Grant recipient myself. There are programs that help our special needs students, programs that help special needs students transition into the workforce, career and technical education. And so the loss of those fundings would have a detrimental impact on education here in Rhode Island and for every Rhode Island student.
So you're worried about the funding, but it also sounds like you're worried about the people who are implementing these programs as well.
Absolutely. I mean, those folks make sure that the funding goes to who it's supposed to be received, and that there's, some quality control there in terms of the funding as it's distributed to the states.
Let's talk about some legislative priorities up on Smith Hill. What's the top priority for NEARI this year?
So I would say our top priority is focused on student well-being and mental health. There is certainly a crisis for mental health and well-being for our students, and it has a significant impact on K-12 education. One of our priorities to that end is to have a committee in every school district that would look at student safety and behavioral health. It would include educators, support staff, administrators, school social workers, counselors, psychologists, and really look at what are the supports that are in existence now and what can we do to further help students around behavioral and mental health supports. I will say that our educators and our staff have seen a significant increase in student behavioral issues in the classroom, and it has a big impact. Our folks are reporting that median that there's about 5 hours lost of instructional time a month due to student behavioral problems. And so having a collaborative process where educators and administrators can look to solve those problems, we think will make positive outcomes for students.
Something that we've talked about quite a bit here on 12 News at 4, especially with the Education Commissioner, is cell phones in schools. Do you support a statewide policy, maybe a statewide ban on cell phones in schools?
So we're certainly in support of a statewide policy in every district, so that legislation that would require every district to have a cell phone policy that would be enforceable not just by classroom teachers. And we think that, those cell phones are a disruption to student learning. It has an impact on the learning environment, and that in the places where we've seen districts that have implemented, whether at the school level or district-wide, policies that are, made with educators, implemented with parents and community members with input from students, and enforced properly, that there's been a tremendous positive impact from that. Students are more engaged in the classroom. They're more engaged in the hallways with each other. They're not looking down at their phones and bumping into people. They're engaged in the lunchroom. They're speaking to each other, and overall that has an impact on student learning and on the morale of the schools and the morale of our folks in the classroom.
We will keep an eye on Smith Hill for some of that legislation. Mary Barden with the National Education Association Rhode Island, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.